Hi, everybody. Mun-Dae-On Astral Oracles. I'm very happy to be with you, and thanks for being here, guys. I'm going to decompress and teach you something about what's going on in the 5D and how to understand some of these codes that they're operating with over there. They have a wicked sense of humor. Whoever is is guiding this. So the job I was doing was just through a temporary agency, but it wound up being packing boxes at Echo, a Danish shoe brand. So this whole theme of the boxes of the 4D opening up into the swirl and the confluences and complex circuitries of the 5D, and of course the narcissus who then meets the echo, the vibration or the resonance, and the union of the two, which opens up the 5D circuitry, which is call and response, resonance, intention, and manifestation. It is so strong up there, and I'm really experiencing so many of these fairly hilarious super synchronicities, a good deal of them relating to the letter K, the number 5, and cattle. So that has been quite enjoyable and interesting living through. But it's become evident to me that it's my body has somehow been the missing piece of the puzzle. So this strange alchemical process of my body somehow is a template that's unwrapping itself, that exists in a higher dimensional form. And of course, where do these biological codes exist? Because the very timing, for instance, of the human fertility cycle is interestingly complex. At some point, hormones will begin to send different signals and distribute like the balance of physical processes and in the organism differently, and that will begin a series um, of developments which changes the physiognomy and the consciousness that resides and is funneled and is operating through it in radically different ways. That is astounding, but of course we're so deeply used to that we just consider that everyday reality. But we do intuitively understand that human beings are somehow apart from the other physical animals who walk the earth, at least visibly, that we can interact with, and that is our sense of being beings in time and being aware of death and our own limitation. So that's the 4D experience right there. But notice how it's also connected to physiognomies which are peculiar and strange. So our ability to be upright, and for instance, human hands, the opposable thumbs, which is a very complex joint, and of course the fact that the human reproduction cycle is, as opposed to all other primates except bonobos, who are like a weird subset of chimpanzees, right? Uh, but is also aligned around the cycles of the moon rather than the sun. And what seems to be happening with this 5D upgrade is partially the opening of our awareness into different realities, but also simply an expansion of the physiognomy to begin to interact with the world in different ways. And I, for instance, get the sense that human beings will begin to live a couple of centuries longer once this process is complete. and that will be, for about 1,000 years, the cycles of the sun. This 5D experience will continue, and there will be fewer humans on the planet, but they will also be kind of traveling. There's this sort of five-dimensional object, which is essentially the creation of humankind, and a thing that we will bring to the table and give to other species and races as we encounter them. But is a kind of focused energy object, concentrated small star that you can use to manipulate the flows of heat, energy, time, and intensity, and that's essentially all you need. So it's a kind of a light source radiator you can turn on and off, and it's seated in the solar plexus. And this is from the place that ultimately, uh, like our imprint, will develop and become a star. So that's also a part of your incarnational trajectory, is that you'll spend a few handfuls of billion years just being pure exuberant energy exploding out and giving life to uh, a multitude of worlds. So that's also in the cards for us and for you personally. But right here in the emergence of the 5D, they are teaching me things about 5D language. And again, it flows in these composites. So in that way, words can mean a lot of things, and it's interesting to me because Danish is quite a 5D language already, and that has to do with it being kind of an old isolated ethnic group, which has been kind of cut down to size. So so there's only like one nationality or ethnicity left within the borders, and that makes for like this weird kind of internal communication, where even the Norwegians and Swedes can't understand the way we slur and muddle our words, because it's almost telepathic. Um, and so, for instance, the word for thank you also means please, and it's tak 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 tak, and you can use that in all kinds of adjusted ways and intonations to just like convey good, happy intentions. And so it's kind of these composites which are almost telepathic, and where if you break it down, you get into some of these sacred tones, um, because all the letters are essentially frequencies which can be extended, expanded, and used to configure things. So of course there are no coincidences in that world, and some of these composites are, for instance, the Mun-Dae-On, because what it refers to is also the what's known as the three refuges in Buddhism. So the Dharmakaya, the Buddhakaya, and the Sangakaya, the teaching or the holy wisdom or the gnosis or the knowledge or the instruction, which is the mu, and that's related to the kettle. I've been hanging up with some cows up in a heather plantation, but like when they go that moo, those are the wisest animals on the planet, right? They figured out the pace of life and being, as the Indians of course know about cattle, that this is the great secret, right? Like they have this wisdom, and it says that is ancient sacred wisdom, as it flows through the cosmic imprints of awareness. And then there is the day, which is the object, right? So this is the Buddhakaya, is the incarnation or the person or the one, and it's also the sacred object of all I was describing, because it's actually harnessed, focused attention, sacred divine energy honed into form and concentrated into manifestation. And as the ascension scale move upwards, this is what awareness is doing. It's more and more aware of itself as a kind of prismatic configuration of attention into manifest form. So where we also think of things like teleportation or astral projection or interstellar travel in very definite terms, consider that if you know that you can sort of place parts of your form and frequency in one place and make that manifest, and then make with your attention other parts of yourself, your frequency, manifest in other parts of the greater cosmos, or the universal space, then you are actually doing that thing where you are teleporting or astral projecting or interstellar traveling at the same time. So all these things are actually related to this D. And notice the secret vibrations, right? Because the D, the DT, like this pointy vibration that then goes with the A, which is the open beginning D, and then it emerges into like pure concentrated energy D. And then we come to the on, which then corresponds to religion or the sacred community or family or kin. uh, so the sangha in the Buddhist analogy, um, the congregation. And the thing is that up there, all this is considered as a kind of a serpentine line, a fate of thread that is uniquely yours, because being aware that you are a drop within the all, which beings up in these higher realms, us included now, are aware of, that we remember our eternal nature and our incarnational paths, then what is it that kind of constitutes the fact that you're still someone and not just the whole thing at once? Well, it's this kind of karmic line or thread, this pull, this destiny. And this also includes, because this is a kind of interpersonal fated phenomenon, this includes all the people in your soul family. So what you understand, what we understand as kind of soulmates or destined encounters, and we have separate categories for them. They don't really have that. And notice also a thing that is often the hallmark of deities, is like incest, like transgressive procreation, seen from a human perspective. And that's because in that perspective, up in those realms, that is connected. So it's the idea, because it's these like superstrings of fate, are actually sort of condensations, harnessings of energy, building higher concentrations of it. And for that reason, sort of the reproduction of them into new shapes is also thought of as a kind of process of things that are more and more similar, concentrating uh, and refining itself into finer products. So you can see how that kind of might seem, very genetically incestuous from our perspective, but it's actually that idea that it's all tied together. And who is the deity? Yeah, it's kind of asking them up here. So what kind of religion have you have you got up here? Oh, we worship the Serpent Mother. No doubt about that. And she is a she. So sometimes make the rhetorical and theological point that God is a she. Uh, and notice how that seems a bit contrived, and of course, rationally speaking, like God, the whole thing at once is as much female as it is male, but it's because in the basic Kalpa world system that we've been living through, which has four dimensions, then the upper authority, the top of the pyramid in that hierarchy, is the Lord of Boxes, who like decides which goes in and which goes out, and is the great sorter and judger and pointer and Lord of points. So that's, he touches his finger, or he points at you, or he puts you in your place, but it's always that great sort of who decides where the separation and where the unification happens. And that is a male archetype. And just as naturally, you can see that the great interconnected, ever flowing, ever present web of the fifth dimensional etheric imprint is, of course, the serpentine flow, because that's the deep mystery of the religious path, the on. That is that it it always sort of seems like you are in a free reality, but you are guided within this reality tunnel, and it's corresponding to itself on all points, and it's showing you a fate, and it has to do with this trust of riding the dragon, the serpent, like the fierce energy that you also can't escape, and that you need to trust will sort of take you around the never-ending story. So up there, of course, she is Sophia. She is holy wisdom. She is on. I find that to be rather beautiful and compelling. And so a thing that I have also become aware of in all this, and has been very synchronistic, is to reading a lot about autism research. And it's been so fascinating for me to understand also like what's been going on in my own life, and in the perspective of this, because so many of the things I've experienced, just being like me being weird, like begging my mother not to wear tight clothes or have seams in my clothes, or any kind of stickers or stitches, are things that are like super symptomatic for autistic children. And it's kind of kept repeating itself, to the fact where every time I look it up, it will go like, oh, and then like you'll notice these special interests, which can be animals or classical literature, which have kind of been the two things that I would not shut up about in my early childhood. So it's kind of been showing me this, and this is connected to a concept called masking. And masking is essentially autistic people pretending to figure out like what is expected of them by people who they actually sense operate from a really limited and narrow-minded and very like looking out for themselves, disingenuous perspective, and then trying to fit themselves into that. And what it is simply, it's this higher kind of energy pattern that people are trying to unwrap, and one of its hallmarks is sincerity. So like that, like figure that people can't quite understand why they can't just speak their mind because they mean well. So what's the problem? We can just talk it out. Another hallmark of it is absorption. So special interest, right? Like that idea that you're just very, very good at being caught up in the curiosity of the world. And another hallmark of it is what you'd probably understand as channeling, but being kind of operated by these higher drives of guidance, where you're just being led around and your attention is being swallowed up, uh, and which also kind of then reveals itself as a type of allergy to some of these like low frequency energies, such as, for instance, lying, or energy vampirism, or some of these things which are, well, parts of the human experience, and that we all struggle with, and have to settle, um, but that are not kind of a part of energetic reality, because energy doesn't lie, and energy is overabundant. So a part of the new challenges that 5D beings face is not how do I get the energy, but how do I conduct the energy? Where does it go, to not destroy things? Because that's actually a part of what has brought us here, like the combustion engine, for instance, is that it frees up a lot of radical energy in the atmosphere, and which is now stirring it and heating it and doing all kinds of things by trapping sunlight in it, right? So in that way, that really is something that we're learning and to conduct. But all these layers need to match up, and that's the ascension. That's the 1111, the four on symbols, the button with the circle in it. And when they line up right, then the upper body and the upper dimension can begin to unite with your body, and energy can funnel through. So try to consider this about yourself and in your life, that you might very well have been a smartphone. That is, consider if a smartphone was somehow brought in to a time in the mid 80s, from 1985. A smartphone would be like a wonderful, fantastic contraption in 1985. It can do all kinds of things. If you remember, like these dingy little games you could get that couldn't really do anything, then compare that to a smartphone, and it has a camera, like a touchscreen, a light, you have a calculator. It's a very, very neat contraption. And yet, of course, from the perspective of a smartphone, it's basically almost dysfunctional and useless right up until it's actually able to go online. So consider that like you're born as a smartphone in 1985, and like you might actually be fairly well adopted, or your functions might come across as functional in the reality you're born into, but you're waiting to come online. You're waiting for Wi-Fi signals and like data networks and everything to become operable, and the infrastructure to be there, because all of the sudden it is one, two, three, and then you're getting all of the updates, and you're able to install new software, and you can run programs, and everything is all of the sudden as it's supposed to be. You can unwrap your capability technologically, and that's actually what we're seeing, like right now. All of the sudden, ether, 5D, akash, it is here, and it is activating people in all kinds of remarkable and stirring ways. But of course, what happens then is that this process, this great purification or alchemization of everything that's happening, it has two directions. So it also generates something that's called karma, which is energetically a type of uh, a byproduct of severing things. So it's the first sacrifice, or the first meal, right? Like that thing where you're taking something in and honing it into to a higher form, and then also leaving some of it out. And that's the great energy flow of the body. So notice that there's like an upward swirl. There's the upward fractal push here, which is honing the energy that goes into your body, into speech, into fine expression, into movement, into radiance, truth, love, and beauty. Uh, and then there is also the opposite swirl, which is also very important to manage, and that is, of course, the process of digestion and gestation and defecation. Um, so there simply needs to be this kind of downward spiral too, and notice how that is also kind of a swirl. So you're actually riding this alchemical process in your center, in your stomach. You're taking in impressions, intentions, and of course substance from the material world, and turning it into different forms of vitality and refuse. And how you do that, that's the great alchemical art that we're all somehow always magically practicing, often without us knowing it. So I think that there was just me delivering this kind of long speech, and if you've made it this far, I also feel like with the number five, I've been channeling for almost 5 years, and I'm somehow coming full circle. So it's not I'll keep doing stuff, but I can tell that partially, like with all these energy openings, a lot of what's been going on with me personally is also that then people have been showing up from my past a lot, for instance, and and I've been kind of showed that, okay, here's like different energy leaks where there's something I needed to finish and close up. So I feel like a little vulnerable, like spilling all over the place, and like it's good for me to retract for a while. So live streams might pick up, but I don't think just now is the time. And I might also focus, I think, on doing a bit more like guided meditations, longer form stuff. So actually returning to some of the beginnings where I was kind of doing recordings and sharing those. So that's just me sharing some thoughts. If you're kind of wondering where's he at, then I'm kind of rebuilding and emerging from the chrysalis here, and that just will take the time it needs to. So I send you my love. I thank you for being on your journey and having crossed paths with mine on this strand of fate that we all share and walk. So I send you my love out there. Much love, guys.